avoid getting the coronavirus, remember to wash your hands thoroughly and frequently before and after preparing food, after using the toilet or changing a diaper for a baby, sick person, or the elderly, after blowing your nose, and after leaving large gatherings or moving away from persons who appear ill. Encourage others to wash their hands and also use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer of 60 to 70% solution. Stay away from events having large gatherings of people. You can expose yourself to more possible infections in large groups. Also, avoid sharing cutlery, cups, glassware, etc. with others. Viruses can linger on these items and may be transferred this way. Avoid shaking and holding hands, and hugging or keeping an infected person in close proximity. This is a message from the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. The symptoms of the coronavirus are similar to those of the common flu or cold, which are consistent coughing and sneezing, fever that does not go away, and difficulty breathing. If you are experiencing any of these symptoms, it is advisable to stay at home until you recover, or if you want to go to your doctor, call first and tell your doctor of your symptoms, any recent travel or contact with travelers. And lastly, please avoid spitting in public. Recent cases have shown that people most likely to be at risk if they contract the virus are persons over age 60 and persons that have an underlying medical condition such as hypertension, diabetes, kidney disease, or a respiratory condition. It is advisable to avoid large crowds or other places where you might have to come in contact with people who are showing signs of the coronavirus. This is a message from the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA.
flowstudy.co. The Flow Study site should open. If it doesn't, go to www.google.com. Enter flowstudy.co in the Google search engine. Once the Flow Study site opens up, then select St. Kitts and Nevis from the list of countries. Step 3. Choose Get Started. Step 4. Click on Login. Step 5. Enter the email address provided by the school, which will be your child's name. For example, Jennifer Jones at moestudents.edu.kn. Enter the password given, which is study SKN, capital S, common TUDY, capital SKN. Select the child's education level. You're in.
It's the ZIZ mobile app, the newest way to get the latest on what's happening locally, regionally, and internationally. Say goodbye to newspaper clutter and hello to updated classifieds on our radio market. Whether you're streaming your favorite local TV or radio shows or catching up on memorable moments in sports and entertainment, the ZIZ mobile app offers this and so much more. Always on the go? Get the ZIZ mobile app today. Visit the App Store on your smartphone or tablet and search for ZIZ News to download the app free of cost. ZIZ Online, reaching you wherever you are.
To avoid getting the coronavirus, Remember to wash your hands thoroughly and frequently before and after preparing food, after using the toilet or changing a diaper for a baby, sick person, or the elderly, after blowing your nose, and after leaving large gatherings or moving away from persons who appear ill. Encourage others to wash their hands and also use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer of 60 to 70% solution. Stay away from events having large gatherings of people. You can expose yourself to more possible infections in large groups. Also, avoid sharing cutlery, cups, glassware, etc. with others. Viruses can linger on these items and may be transferred this way. Avoid shaking and holding hands, and hugging or keeping an infected person in close proximity. This is a message from the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA.
Is on.
Good afternoon and welcome to the National Emergency Operations Center COVID-19 daily briefing for the 9th of May 2020. I am Lesroy Williams. Thank you very much for joining us today, wherever you are. If you are listening on radio or watching on television, or you have joined us on social media, thank you for your presence. We continue to update you on the management of the novel coronavirus or COVID-19 in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Information is key, communication is key to beating the pandemic. Today we have a number of presenters. We have a presentation from the Department of Labor. We have a presentation from the Met Office, the police, the Ministry of Health, and the NEOC. Before we begin with our presentations, I would like you to take some time to look at a video which would provide you with steps to filling out the application form for the Social Security COVID-19 Relief Fund.
Applying for the COVID-19 Relief Fund can be done in a few simple steps. Go to the link in the description, www.socialsecurity.kn. This page contains important information regarding the fund. It also provides you with contact information in case you have any questions. You can now begin to fill out the form with your personal information. Enter your social security number, first name, middle name, surname, your date of birth, gender, occupation, home address, P.O. Box number, email address, and telephone number. You now need to input your employment history. This includes your current employer, date last employed, your last pay date, the period which you were employed for, and your secondary employer, if applicable. Next, fill out the eligibility section. Lastly, complete the banking information. This includes the account holder's name, the account number, the name of financial institution, and the type of account. Enter your name as the claimant's signature. Click on Submit to send, and now you're good to go.
Thank you very much for viewing that video, which provided you with tips on how to fill out the form for the Social Security COVID-19 Relief Fund. I now invite Dr. Dion Webb, Deputy Commissioner of Labor, to address us. Dr. Webb.
A pleasant good afternoon to all. The Department of Labor is once again pleased to be here to update the nation on various labor-related matters. Firstly, let's look at what the staff at the Department of Labor has been doing to ensure workers' income assistance claims are processed and forwarded to Social Security for payment. Over the past 4 to 5 weeks, the Department of Labor ensured claims from verified qualified applicants were processed efficiently and passed on to Social Security for further verification and payment. It is important to note that this exercise is a time-consuming process, and the Department of Labor has made sure everything is done efficiently and that people affected get their benefits under the Social Security COVID-19 Relief Fund. Over the Labor Day weekend, the Department of Labor staff members were able to process over 1,300 applications. As I speak, there are staff members working from home this weekend processing application to ensure that those persons affected can benefit from the COVID-19 Relief Fund. To date, the Department of Labor St. has sent 4,863 verified applications to Social Security. The Department of Labor Nevis has sent 1,981 to Social Security. Together, 6,844 verified applications were sent to Social Security for payment from St. Kitts and Nevis. According to Social Security, the total sent to accounts for payment is approximately 3,527, or 52% of the applications received from the Department of Labor in St. Kitts and Nevis. Please be reminded that this payment is for 3 months, April, May, and June 2020 in the first instance. And to qualify, you must fit into one of these categories as a result of COVID-19. 1, you must be laid off. 2, reduce hours, taking your monthly earnings below $1,000. 3, severed or your position made redundant. And 4, a registered self-employed person. The Department of Labor has taken several steps to prevent fraud and people claiming who were not affected by the pandemic. Please to be patient. The payments will be made every day until the 3 months commitment is made. We also hope some people will return to work as the economic activity or lockdown continues to be eased little by little. The Department of Labor is appealing to all employers who indicated in the past weeks that they were impacted by the pandemic to please notify us via email about the present status of your employees as the lockdown continues to be eased little by little. Simply speaking, if your employees who were laid off, they were now called back out to work, please to indicate to the Department of Labor. If their hours have now been increased, please to notify the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor is concerned about the safety, health, and welfare of all workers, even as they return to work part-time or full-time. Secondly, I want to address holiday with pay during the pandemic. It is lawful, it is correct for an employee to commence or go on annual paid holiday during the pandemic. Let me repeat, it is lawful, it is correct for an employee to commence or go on annual paid holidays during the pandemic. Such annual paid holidays shall be given and taken in one period, or where the employer and the worker so agree, in 2 periods, and not otherwise. And every such agreement shall be in writing by both the employer and worker. Employers must not apply annual paid holidays in snippets. For example, on those lockdown days, for example, today is a lockdown day. A worker was scheduled to work today, but due to the lockdown, that worker is unable to work. An employer must not tell that worker to use a vacation day. And if next week we have another lockdown day again, the employer must not tell the employee, take another vacation day. And if another day is the lockdown on the weekend, the employer must not again tell that worker to take another holiday with pay. It must be taken in one period, or where there's agreement in 2 periods. Thirdly, I want to address the issue of reduced wages or salaries cut during the pandemic. This situation has been very difficult for both employers and workers. Some employers reach out to the Labor Commissioner's office, indicating their strong desire to keep their staff employed. These employers do not want to lay off their staff or terminate them due to redundancy. The proposed staff take a pay cut for maximum 3 months. The Labor Commissioner's office prefers these workers to have half or 3/4 of a bread during these difficult, uncertain times than to be laid off and have no bread. It is within this in mind that the Commissioner's office has indicated to these employers that we will support their proposal of a temporary reduction in wages for a maximum of 3 months. Let me repeat, it is with this in mind that the Commissioner's office has indicated to those employers that we will support their proposal of a temporary reduction in wages for a maximum of 3 months. Another issue I want to address is employees who are laid off currently. Over the past few days, the Department of Labor has been inundated with calls and queries from employees who were laid off by the employer. These calls surround what benefits are due to them while they are laid off, and if they are entitled to severance payment. Firstly, according to law, no employee is entitled to any wages while he or she is laid off. Number 2, according to the Protection of Employment Act, the layoff period is a maximum of 12 weeks. Thirdly, after 12 weeks, the employee may request his or her employer to treat his or her employment as terminated and the employee shall then be entitled to severance payment if he or she has worked for the same employer for at least 1 year. The Commissioner Office is strongly urging and appealing to all employees who are laid off. If the 12 weeks go beyond, if the layoff period go beyond 12 weeks, we are urging them not to request to be terminated. The Labor Commissioner's Office is strongly urging and appealing to these employees that if the layoff period go beyond 12 weeks, that they must not request to be terminated. We prefer to have as many persons employed as possible. As the lockdown continues to ease little by little, the Commissioner Office is optimistic that these employees who are currently laid off will resume work shortly. I want to reassure applicants who have outstanding severance and long service claims at the Department of Labor that these matters will be settled soonest. In conclusion, I want to thank our Senior Minister and Minister of Labor, the Honorable Vance Amory, our Permanent Secretary, Ms. Sharon Rattan, Mr. Maynard and the staff at Social Security, Mr. Gary Leibert, Chief Labor Officer in Nevis and his staff, the staff at the Ministry and Department of Labor in St. Kitts, and to the general public. And I want to wish all mothers out there a happy Mother's Day tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Webb. I would now invite Mr. Elmo Burke, Senior Met Officer, to give us a presentation on the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season predictions. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Good evening to the listening and viewing audience. Today, I will briefly present the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season forecast. As we all are aware, the hurricane season is from June the 1st to November the 30th each year. All leading institutions have indicated that we can expect an above average hurricane season, and as such, we here in St. Kitts and Nevis need to prepare for that. Based on that, we are looking at two leading institutions, the Colorado State University as well as the University of Arizona, and both of them are hinting that we can expect a above average hurricane season. The Colorado State University has indicated that we can expect 16 storms developing, 8 of which may develop into hurricane, and out of these 8, 4 of which may develop into major hurricane. Whereas the University of Arizona is hinting higher figures, where they're suggesting that we can see 19 storms developing, 10 of which can develop into hurricanes, and out of these 10, 5 of them can develop into major hurricanes. And when we talk about major hurricanes, we are speaking about categories 3, 4, and 5. As such, it is really important that we keep this in mind as we still deal with the whole COVID pandemic situation. Also, the reason that we are looking at this projection in terms of an above average season, because we are anticipating above average warm sea surface temperatures. And as such, we're also anticipating a possible La Nina developing this fall. And when we say La Nina conditions usually allows for favorable development of hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, I just want to give you some basic preparedness tips as we move into the hurricane season. And I'm going to look at from a household level as well as the businesses level. It is always encouraging to ask the family to have a basic disaster plan in place. For example, know where you're going to go in the event that you are asked to evacuate. Have some kind of non-perishables on stock. Also, it is important that each family member know their responsibility. In terms of the businesses, though, you're looking at a similar approach. The businesses are encouraged to have a disaster plan, and they also encouraged to ensure that each member of staff know their role. before, during, and after any potential impact from a storm. And it's also important for the business sector to ensure that you start backing up your files, because you never know when a storm may impact us. Now, some important things to remember and to note and keep in mind. Know your emergency contacts. For example, the police, the hospital, NEMO, Red Cross, etc. These are just some examples. Also, know where you're going to get your information from. You need to know your authoritative source for your information. And again, these info, whether we're looking at NEMO, the Med Services, or NEMD. And also, we are encouraging the general public, be ready to respond and act if you're called upon. To end, start preparing now. Do not wait until you're under the threat of a storm to start preparing. I thank you, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burke, for that presentation. We are fast approaching the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. I now invite Superintendent of Police Cromwell Henry, Divisional Commander of District A, to address us.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. A pleasant good afternoon to all. The past 24 hours, during police operations and routine patrols, 6 persons were arrested for breach of the curfew. So far to date, a total of 126 persons have been arrested for violations under the emergency regulations. Today and tomorrow are 24-hour curfew days. Residents are reminded that the shelter-in-place order is still in effect. This means that every person shall remain confined to your place of residence, inclusive of your yard space. I emphasize yard space. I emphasize your place of residence, as it is not okay to be at a friend's residence or another family member's residence, or even at the back of a closed bar to socialize. Regulation 10 provides that no person shall host, attend, or visit a private party, recreational or competitive sporting event, or other types of public entertainment, banquet, ball, or reception, any other ceremony in any public facility or place, any bars, rum shop, or any other type of social event. Utilizing public sporting facilities for recreational purposes is also prohibited. All religious and educational places of instruction or worship shall remain closed. However, these activities are not prohibited if conducted by electronic or virtual means. These provisions are intended to enhance public health and reduce our risk of infection. Let us all cooperate with the authorities and comply with the provisions of the emergency regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Henry. I now invite Chief Medical Officer Dr. Hazel Laws to give us the health report. Dr. Laws.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and pleasant good afternoon to everyone. The World Health Organization continues its robust global surveillance of the COVID-19 pandemic, reporting 3,855,788 confirmed cases with almost 266,000 deaths. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we have sampled and tested a total of 327 persons. 312 persons were confirmed negative, while 15 were confirmed positive. Of the 15 positive cases, 14 persons have recovered. I repeat, of the 15 positive cases, 14 persons have recovered. To date, we have 0 deaths. There is currently 0 results pending. A total of 57 persons remain in quarantine, 56 in a government-assigned facility, while 1 person is quarantined at home. 1 person remains in isolation and is recovering. To date, 756 persons have been released from quarantine. Though we are experiencing an increase in the number of persons recovering from the virus, let us not become complacent. Today, COVID-19 is actually a part of our lives. From our interactions and conversations to the way we shop for groceries and work, our lives have been changed by this new coronavirus. As a nation, we must adapt to this new norm and do all we can to remain strong and healthy. I encourage you to continue to adhere to all safety guidelines, including wearing face masks in public, sanitizing your hands regularly, and maintaining the physical distance measures of at least 6 feet between persons. Your actions thus far have helped to contain the first wave of the COVID-19 infections. We are all encouraged to work together, doing our part to reduce the impact of this disease. Remember, maintaining the overall health of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis continues to be our individual and collective responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laws. I now invite Ms. Vesta Southwell, PRO at NEMA, to give the NEOC report. She is filling in for Mr. Abdias Samuel.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and greetings, everyone. It has been 40 days today since the activation of the National Emergency Operations Center in support of the Health Emergency Operations Center. Over the past 24 hours, the 311 hotline has received a total of 21 calls. In St. Kitts, the 911 has received a total of 58 calls, with 19 being calls related to police business and 1 related to fire. At the St. Kitts NEOC, there were 6 calls received over the last 24 hours, 1 related to police, a person not wearing a mask. There were 2 health-related calls, 1 related to utilities, and 2 requests for permission. The EOC on Nevis has received 15 calls over the last 24 hours. I would like to thank, on behalf of the National Disaster Coordinator, Abdias Samuel, the members of the NEOC as they continue their Herculean efforts in our national fight against COVID-19. We also want to thank the service of the nurses and the security forces who continue to support all of the activities from the NEOC. I also wanted to make mention of the presentation by Mr. Elmer Burke, who is the Senior Met Officer and one of our closest stakeholders at this time at NEMA. We don't want persons to believe that we have forgotten that we are fast approaching the hurricane season. It was thought that with everything that was going on internationally, but specifically locally, related to our fight against this disease would have been so overwhelming that perhaps we would begin to work in the background to prepare for the Atlantic hurricane season. As Mr. Burke has said, it is expected to be above average, and we are asking persons to remember your great work during our fight against this COVID-19. You have done everything that NEMA has been reaching out to you over the years, encouraging you to do at hurricane season time. We are just asking you to replicate those actions. Continue to be prepared. We are going to be all right. We are going to be all right, and NEMA, for sure, will be doing exactly what we need to be doing at this time of year. We do this and we accomplish much of our efforts through the collaboration of our many stakeholders. So we want to thank you once again, Mr. Burke, and we want to thank you. Remember, this is what I want to leave with you today. Know who your district managers are. If you are uncertain, call into the National Emergency Operations Center, tell the operator where you live, and ask them to share the information as to who you may call in the event that something hurricane-related occurs. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Vesta. We now arrive at the question and answer segment. We have here, you can ask questions that were coming out of the presentations that we had today. We have Senior Met Officer Mr. Elmer Burke. We have Dr. Dion Webb, who is the Deputy Commissioner of Labor. We have the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, Medical Chief of Staff, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson. We also have our Attorney General, Honorable Vincent Byron, and our Senior Minister, Minister of State with responsibility for health, the Honorable Wendy Phipps. The first question goes to the Honorable Wendy Phipps. In the past, we were given information about the refusal to use some rapid test kits that were received from medical doctor, Dr. Drew, to test persons for COVID-19 here in the Federation. I know that you gave a reason for not using them before, but once again, can you let us know the reason for those who were not satisfied for the reason given before? Because there seems to be a big song and dance that these kits were rejected for political reasons. Also, were they complete kits, halfway kits, or were they similar to those faulty Chinese kits that were rejected around the world by the larger countries?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Williams, for relaying that question. Let me repeat myself. On or around, I think it was the 4th of April, we would have begun acknowledging the donations that were coming in or had just started coming in from various individuals. As such, a release would have been made by the Ministry of Health that the first set of donations would have included, among other matters, the donation of 19 sachets or test strips from Dr. Terence Drew, a candidate in the upcoming general elections. In that announcement, I would have also indicated that we would have received a check for $20,000 from Galaxy Real Estate, the persons associated with the Ramada project. I would have indicated not one, but 2 reasons at that time, and have consistently repeated the 2 reasons whenever I have been asked to do so. And here are the reasons as follows again. I indicated, first of all, that the test kits were written in Mandarin. That's the first thing. The second thing, which was the more meaty issue with regards to why the Ministry of Health were not using the test, is because we had no way of validating the tests. In other words, we could not ascertain if they were efficacious, if the tests would do what they were supposed to do. And of course, in a subsequent news release, we would have issued again the reiteration of what I just said, and with the addition that the Ministry of Health, out of an abundance of caution, had made the decision not to use these test kits or any other test kits for that matter because of the high failure rates around the globe that had been discovered in the use of the tests, which are primarily serum type or blood drops taken on a strip to test for antibodies in your system. In some cases, the data showed us that there were 50% or higher unreliability in terms of the results given. We would have also cited data from Spain. We would have cited data out of the United Kingdom, the Czech Republic, and other areas of the world where such tests had been used and the rejection rates were very high. Subsequently, this item became very popular in the news all over the world. We are still at the point, if you're following what the FDA in the United States is saying and what the WHO, the World Health Organization, has advised the Ministry of Health here, that there is yet to be a rapid test kit that the WHO is willing to put their name behind. And as a result of that, the ministry's position then is still the ministry's position now. The decision not to use the test had nothing to do with the individual who donated the test. As a matter of fact, I would have also listed the date when that announcement was made, that we would have received test kits donated from the St. Kitts Biomedical Research Foundation. Those test kits are also not in use.
Thank you, Minister Phipps. This question is for the AG. Has St. Kitts and Nevis accepted the Commonwealth's COVID-19 Business Law Response Initiative? If yes, to what extent? And if no, why not? Attorney General.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams, and I must apologize because I am not familiar with the Commonwealth Law Business Response Initiative, and I can review it and have a position on it either tomorrow or on another day. At this point in time, I'm unable to have a comment on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney General. This question is for Dr. Wilkinson. What is your professional and personal advice about returning to the gym at this time? Is it something that you would do at this time?
I'm wondering if the person who asked that question knows that I'm someone who loves to go to the gym. And I can tell you that I was going to say dying to be in the gym, but longing to be in the gym. And I haven't been able to. I think that one has to exercise extreme caution. And even if the gyms are open, the gym is a place where it is very difficult for one to maintain the 6 feet social distancing. And I believe that if gyms are open, they would have to have a limited number of persons who are using the equipment. Also in the gym, when you are running, doing lifting, etc., you would be forcibly breathing and expelling a lot of respiratory droplets. Therefore, it means that you would have to be making sure that if you're there, you're exercising with mask and making sure that you take all the necessary precautions, even before COVID-19, within most gyms, we were taking precautions where the machines will be wiped down with sanitizers, etc. And I believe that right now, me personally, you ask me what is my personal opinion, although I would love to be back in the gym, I will wait a few more weeks to see how things develop before I go back in the gym. So even if a gym is open, unless it's going to be limited to a very limited number of persons, so we can ensure social distancing and you can ensure that the equipment, etc., is being sanitized, I would not personally go back in the gym at this point in time.
This question is for the Deputy Commissioner of Labor. The question is, foreign-owned companies are opening up in the Federation with all foreign workers and driving local businesses out of business. First, the Chinese supermarkets, air conditioning, car parts, and jewelry at Port Zante. Now with COVID-19 and a serious rise of unemployment, is the government going to put local worker quotas in place? Is it even legal to have one foreign worker for a foreign-owned firm? Dr. Webb.
I want to thank that person for that question. The Labor Act 1818 states, for the definition of worker means any person who has entered into work or works under a contract with an employer, and it goes on. If you go to the Protection of Employment Act, it speaks about employee, and it says employee means any person who works with an employer under a contract of service in the capacity whether such contract is expressed or implied. If you go to the Immigration Act, Cap 6.02, it speaks about work permit. It says a person other than a citizen or an approved CARICOM citizen shall not, while in St. Christopher Nevis, engage in any occupation or accept employment without having first obtained a written permit granted by the minister for that purpose. It goes further to say a person shall not engage or employ another person who is not a citizen, resident, or CARICOM citizen unless there is a work permit in force in relation to that other person and for the purpose of that engagement. So let us assume that the person has a work permit. Now, in the definition at the Labor Department, we have to deal with workers. And as I said, a worker or an employee is any person. It doesn't speak about the nationality. It speaks about there being any person. Now, the Labor Commissioner is charged under the Labor Act with protecting and safeguarding and promoting the health and safety and welfare of all workers of the state. So if that situation exists, what we can do is bring the issue to the attention of our minister via our permanent secretary, and we can see what steps we can take to improve the situation. As the at Department of Labor, we will step up on our inspections. We will collaborate with the Ministry of National Security to ensure that persons out there working, that they have the proper documentation to work. And again, let me say that the Labor Office is charged with safeguarding the welfare and safety of all workers within the state. And finally, Let us look at the Protection of Employment Act, Section 11, where it says prohibition against termination of employment. An employer shall not terminate the contract of an employee on any of the following grounds. And if you go to Section D, it says race, place of origin, birth out of wedlock. And let us look at place of origin. So once the person has the proper documentation to work, no employer has the right, because Tom is from another country, has the right to terminate the services of Tom because he was not born here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. So I will pass on the information to our minister, and we'll see how we as a department can police the situation that exists out there. Thank you.
This question was asked before, but I will ask it again so that emphasis can be made. It is for Superintendent Henry. What can one further do once they have made several reports about neighbors' excessive smoking of weed, marijuana? The police already came and spoke to the persons, but they go right back after the police leaves. The smoke is really affecting my infant. Can these individuals be charged or arrested in any way?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Williams. I think that I would have mentioned on a previous occasion that every person has a right to enjoy their homes. You should not be disturbed by your neighbors in any way, whether by noise or by smoke or in any other form. If you are disturbed by the actions of your neighbor, in this case by smoking, and you call the police, and the police would have spoken to the persons before, and they continue when the person leaves, then you remain an aggrieved person, you remain a victim. Your next step, if you wish for the police to take it to the next level, is to give a statement to the police. You would have to indicate to the police that you're willing to go to court. The police would record a statement, and then they would take the necessary action against the persons to take them before the court. Or you have the civil remedy that you can take to see a lawyer and take a civil action against the person. So if you wish for the police to take it any further, you would have to indicate that you want the matter to be taken before the court, give the police a statement, and the police would take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. This question is from Sugar City 90.3 FM. Should the Federation unfortunately receive the impact of a hurricane and COVID-19 is still on the scene, how will the physical distancing be maintained in an emergency shelter situation? For example, losing one's roof and having to take shelter in your neighbor's small house or with many families in a community center. Who will take that? Dr. Wilkinson, Vesta.
I would just answer one part and leave the other part to someone else. I believe one has to be practical, and one always have to think about the immediate safety and security of persons. And so if, for example, one is in their home and there's a hurricane and your roof is blown off and you have to run to your neighbor's house, you run to your neighbor's house because you have to secure your life immediately. Hopefully you'll be able to put a mask on when you get there so that you control the respiratory droplets. But I believe the first thing would be to save your life immediately. And if you have to shelter together, then that's the most practical thing that I would advise that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Also, as it relates to the shelters, if a person receives an impact to their premises and they have to access one of the shelters, bearing in mind that we would have gone through all of these processes and learning curves with the COVID-19, we would recognize that certain things would obviously be put in place to enable some form of social distancing as necessary within the shelters if someone has to access them at any time. I don't anticipate that there would be a problem with that. Thank you for your question.
This person is sharing a concern and a question. I'm getting calls from taxi operators for construction work. With the tourism industry impacted mostly by the pandemic, what aid is put in place for the taxi and tour operators, especially persons who have retired and are now dependent on this business for their family? Dr. Webb.
Thank you very much again for that question. Remember the criteria for the COVID-19 relief. If a taxi operator, we are hoping that they are registered self-employed persons. Once they're registered self-employed, then they can apply to Social Security and receive the benefit. What I can also do is check with Social Security, see how many complaints or see how many persons have applied for the assistance who may not qualify, and then we can ask Social Security to maybe ask the board if they may want to do some tweaking or reconsider or some adjustment in maybe this category of persons may be included. But it is perfectly fine for if a taxi operator during this time wants to engage in another economic activity, it is perfectly legal for him to do so, because at the end of the day, he has his bills to pay. So the Department of Labor will welcome such gesture. But I will definitely liaise with Social Security to see exactly what other assistance can be given to those persons who may not qualify under the existing criteria, but they were impacted by the COVID-19 relief. Thank you.
This question is also for Dr. Webb. What advice can the Labor Department give to government employees who are requested to return to work next week to have no access to daycare or preschool facilities? Is it correct that they must take a vacation or leave without pay?
I want to thank the writer for that question as well. This situation is just not unique to government workers. As a matter of fact, we have seen this a lot outside of government, where persons, as the writer said, that because of the lockdown or the state of emergency, that we know school basically closed and the daycare, and they have to go out to work. The advice from the Labor Department is have a discussion with your employer. Now, firstly, your employer knows that you have a child, a young child. Have a discussion and try to come to some kind of compromise. Is it that I can perform certain tasks at home? I know what we do currently at the Department of Labor. We have some employees, especially those with young children, we allow them to work from home. So we have some persons, as I said earlier in my presentation, they are right now verifying and processing applications for COVID-19. Some of them are working on severance and long service claims, and they are working from home. Then we will go and pick up the documents from them, and those of us who have more freedom then will come into the office. So I will advise persons out there, have a discussion with your employer, okay? Because at the end of the day, you do not want, you know, our labor laws, I don't want to use the word and say weak, but it is not too difficult. The reality is not too difficult for an employer to end the services of an employee within the Federation. If you read the Protection of Employment Act, you will see that for yourself. So be very careful. I know you may be frustrated, but have a discussion with your employer and see what compromise. There might be something else on the job you may be able to do. And then you will see. And then we are also appealing to employers as well, that you know who your employees are, you know their situation, you know the reality that exists. School is out, daycares, etc. closed. Please, we are asking you to show some solidarity, to emphasize, to be empathetic, to be understanding. We know you have your business to run, but even though you may employ me to do certain tasks, the Labour Commissioner's office is willing to accept or support if you're going to ask a female to work from home to perform tasks outside of her original terms and condition of employment. We are willing, because at the end of the day, we want to keep persons in employment. So my final advice is please to have a discussion with your employer and see what compromise can be worked. If you still meet a roadblock, then you can contact us at the Department of Labor and we see what persuasive skills we can use to put you in a better situation.
Thank you. This question is for Superintendent Henry. Could there be some further clarification and hopefully consensus between the police and medical experts on the recommendations put forward last week by Dr. Wilkinson regarding the wearing of a mask while walking, running on the road? While the question responded to last week specifically referred to running solo, the spirit of the response would also reasonably seem to apply to walking for exercise. However, persons including myself have been stopped by the police while walking and told they should have a mask, as the law requires the wearing of a mask in public. While I fully endorse and seek to comply with every effort to reduce the COVID-19 risk, is the wearing of a mask deemed absolutely necessary by persons exercising alone and who pose no apparent risk to anyone else? One must try to be practical and reasonable in applying the law and seek to follow the spirit of the law rather than its rigid application. It's also suggested that the medical experts properly debrief the police on any relevant decisions, recommendations arising from these briefings, so that they could be guided thereby and avoid any ambiguity. Superintendent.
Long question, but I think the gist of the question is that there should be better coordination between the recommendation of the medical personnel and the law enforcement officers. I take the point. We would seek to further educate our officers on this. While the law requires that one should wear the mask in public, the medical authorities has advised that if you are alone, exercising, for example, you're not close to anyone, no one is at risk, then you could remove the mask, have it with you, either around your neck or in your pocket, but have it with you, and when you come into contact with someone, you put it on. So we take that point and we would educate the officers so that there is some compromise between wearing the mask and having the mask.
Thank you, Superintendent Henry. This question has to do with disaster preparedness. I would like to find out whether the inventory of emergency shelters has increased since the last hurricane season. will there be in light of COVID-19 and social distancing? In other words, has the square footage of the number of places where one could receive emergency shelter increased?
Thank you very much for that question. I think that we had a very interesting schedule today, and the presentation by Mr. Elmer Burke, sort of a preview of the work that the Disaster Mitigation Council and NEMA has to do. Of course, we have with us PRO for NEMA, Ms. Vesta Southwell, who does an excellent job of putting information on the NEMA website, Facebook, daily, with a number of tips and advice and directions as to where you can get information. The Disaster Mitigation Council is a council that prepares, as it was, us for hurricanes and other disasters and so forth. There are some 10 subcommittees that operate, and planning committees, one of which has to do with shelters, community centers, and they visit each of our districts to identify the requisite public buildings that need to be prepared in the event of a hurricane. If there needs to be repairs, if there need to be furnishings or whatever it is that needs to be put into these centers. There could be community centers. In some cases, there have been church buildings. But there is a committee that identifies the shelters. Clearly, in our COVID environment, these shelters now have to be evaluated to see if we have the requisite space to have the social distancing that will be required, if you have cots, other types of facilities in these buildings. And when our committees meet, they will have to take these into account and so forth. We expect to get more information which we will want to share with the public. And again, I'm sure you could always go to NEMA's Facebook page, and you'll hear from Vesta Southwell, who will give us some very good information and tips as we come closer and get more involved in the hurricane season. Thank you.
Thank you very much, AG, and thank you for that question once again. Just to say that Mr. G. Knight, who is the convener for the Housing and Shelter Subcommittee as part of the National Disaster Plan, was here at the NEOC doing a briefing some weeks ago, I think, and I think maybe it's the opportune moment to invite him back, just to ensure that persons have all of the requisite information as we enter the hurricane season. So look forward to a presentation from Mr. G. Knight on the Housing and Shelter Subcommittee, and some of those issues that have been brought up, I'm sure, will be addressed then. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General and Ms. Southwell. These last two questions, one is for the Chief Medical Officer and the other is for the Deputy Commissioner of Labor. Chief Medical Officer, what criteria would the medical team use to recommend a reopening of bars and restaurants, for in-house dining, and for the lifting of all curfews? From all accounts, we are doing well in terms of recoveries and no new infections. I'm concerned that if we don't get a break now, it is unlikely we would after the borders are opened, since you will then make a case for the continuation of restrictions. Please help me to understand. And this question for Dr. Webb. What is the standard wait time to be contacted for the Social Security stimulus package? The form along with the documents requested were submitted since early last month.
Thank you for reading that question, Mr. Williams. And so the individual is inquiring about the criteria, the process of relaxation of restrictions, particularly with respect to bars, restaurants, in-house dining. Now, the Ministry of Health continues to monitor the COVID-19 outbreak locally, regionally, and internationally. And we continue, and based on where we are at, we have been successful in containing the first wave of infections. We have one case who is recovering. The other 14 have recovered. However, we still have a number of persons in quarantine to be tested. We still have a number of persons in quarantine to be tested. And so we continue to monitor the current status. And we also continue to relax the measures locally in order to encourage some economic and social life. So the relaxation continues. You realize the upcoming week, 2 weeks, you're going to be having 5 days, Monday to Friday, 5 days of limited operation, and this will continue the following week. Previously, we've had 4 days of limited operation, and we've added 2 hours, one in the morning and in the evening. And so the relaxation, we are being cautious. We are monitoring the system, the situation on the ground, and as we go forward, the relaxation hopefully will continue. Hopefully we don't have another case. And so just patience in terms of our taking into consideration bars, restaurants, and in-house dining. I want to use this opportunity to add, though, we cannot go back to what used to be. It's going to be a new norm for bars, restaurants in general. And so your tables, you're going to have to start looking at your tables. Seating, you need to your tables and seating would have to adhere to the new social and physical distancing norms. So while you are await the opening of restaurants and bars, start looking at your establishment, what exists and what changes you're going to have to make such that your establishment would meet the new norm, which would be in keeping with the social and physical distancing measures. Thank you.
I want to thank the person for the question. I do apologize for the delay in processing the application. We normally tend to get out the applications about roughly in 3 days. We had some issues with our email. The state of emergency really also impacted us. Now that we are back out physically in the building, things have really accelerated. What you can do, you can send me a message at 663-4131, 663-4131, and then I will tell you to send me your application, and then we will have it processed immediately on Monday. God spare life, okay? That's 663-4131. Once again, we're really sorry, and we do apologize for the long delay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laws and Dr. Webb. We have come to the end of our question and answer segment for today. Thank you very much for your questions and I do hope that you are satisfied with the response. If not, you can have a follow-up question at our next briefing. I want to say thank you to Dr. Webb, who is our Deputy Commissioner of Labor, for coming today and giving us that presentation. So many people are inquiring about the stimulus package from Social Security and would have certain issues related to labor. We thank Mr. Elmer Burke, our Senior Met Officer, for sharing with us on the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season the predictions for that season. We realize that even though we have COVID-19, it doesn't mean that the hurricane season is going to go away. We still have to contend with it, and we still have to prepare for the eventuality of any storm or hurricane. We thank Superintendent of Police Cromwell Henry for his report, his police report. We thank Dr. Laws, Hazel Laws, our Chief Medical Officer, and Vesta Southwell, Public Relations Officer at NEMA, for giving the NEOC report. Thanks to all of you. I would like additionally to thank Mrs. Christmas Jacobs for her service of sign language, the Attorney General, the Honorable Vincent Byron, and our Minister of State with responsibility for health, the Honorable Wendy Phipps, who opened the batting today. And thank you to the media, to ZIZ, Open Interactive, all of you who continue to tune in, Win FM and Sugar City Rock and Freedom FM, and all the media houses in the Federation. We say a big thank you to continue to provide that information and update to persons with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. Tomorrow we will be back for another daily briefing at 5 p.m. Until then, take care and continue to be safe.
Newly here to inform the visiting delegates.
We're here at the Ocean Terrace in
ZIZ Evening Newscast, weekdays at 7 p.m.
As fears about the effects of the coronavirus pandemic continue, it is natural that people may be experiencing more episodes of anxiety as a result. Common signs and symptoms of anxiety include feeling nervous, restless, and tense, having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom, hyperventilating, sweating, or trembling, having trouble concentrating and excessive worry, having trouble sleeping. If you are experiencing any of these signs of anxiety, there are some things that you could do to cope. Reach out for help and talk to a trusted friend or individual who could help to distract you from some of the worrying thoughts. Avoid watching too many news items that focus on the negative impact of the coronavirus. Decide instead on a few specific times daily when you could get your news from reputable news sources. Make sure that you maintain some normalcy and regularity in your daily schedule as much as possible. Focus on the things in your life that you can control and do them. You can control what you watch on TV, what you listen to, who you talk to for support, and how you take care of your body. Remember to seek mental health and psychosocial support if necessary. This message was brought to you from the St. Kitts Mental Health Association.
Present yourself.
is on.